Hi, everyone. I am so happy you've joined us here on Godwinks. I'm Gina Tognoni-Shirello,
And I am Ashley Crane.
and we are so honored to have our special guest today, Scott Bryce. Fans from the soap opera As the World Turns didn't just watch his work, they felt it. His portrayal of Craig Montgomery created a bond with audiences. Scott is here today to chat with us about his wide-ranging acting career, both in daytime and nighttime television, as well as his remarkable health journey. Scott was diagnosed with stage 3 stomach and esophageal cancer last year. Blessed to have detected it early, he will share with us a few Godwinks that changed his perspective and influenced his art.
And Gina, thank you so much for bringing Scott on. I am so excited to meet him. You had the chance to talk to him before he hopped on with us today, right? And what was that like?
I sure did. We have never met before, actually. I remember growing up and seeing his face on As the World Turns and just remarking to myself, he's a handsome man, but also good. He was really good. He is so kind and so truly the real deal. He's authentic. You can just see that he's a good artist. He takes his time in explaining, wonderful storyteller. And the stories that he shares, the Godwinks that he gets into, has such detail that I just really think the viewers are going to be able to feel every nuance. So I'm excited for them to hear it.
And what made you want to bring Scott on today?
I have to thank Alan Locker, who hosts the podcast, The Locker Room. He contacted me and said, "Hey, I have my friend Scott Bryce, who did the show. You may want to talk to him." And I find out that during their interview, he mentions a Godwink, and I think that's probably what made him think that. But I honestly am so blessed because we pray for good guests that want to come in and open
Yeah.
up their heart and open up their lives, and he
Mhm.
does exactly that. Welcome, Scott.
Oh, thank you. Nice to see you both. How are you?
So great to see you. We first up, let's thank Alan Locker. In fact, he's the one that connected us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you did his podcast last year.
I've done several of his shows. I loved what he did, that
Yeah,
he's just created this world. And I think it's fantastic. He's a great interviewer and a great guy.
yeah. And Alan Locker, for the listeners, he has a wonderful podcast called The Locker Room. And fun fact, Alan and I met because he was a publicist at Guiding Light back in the day when I played Dinah Marlar. And I'm so grateful that he connected us. And we have a through line here. We both have a connection to Guiding Light. Tell me about yours.
My father played Bill Bauer on The Guiding Light, who was Mike and Ed's father. He was like the head of the Bauer family. The only
You-
person older than that was played by the actor Theo Getz, who played Papa Bauer, who was actually my father's father on the show. Theo was a extremely well-known actor in Austria who's was Jewish, and his
Mhm.
wife was friends with Erwin Rommel's wife, and a package came to their house, and it was flowers, and inside was a card, and then there was another card that fell out, and she opened it, and it said, "Leave tonight,"
Oh my goodness.
and they fled. And that's why they lived, and they started the roundups and the arrests. So that's why they even came here. And then he was a extraordinarily well-known actor in Europe, and then came here and landed this job on Guiding Light.
Wow.
This is your and both of your parents are creative. You grew up in a creative environment your whole life, but it's very notable that both of your parents were creatives.
Yeah, indeed. Well, actually, on As the World Turns, my mother, my father, my brother, my wife, and myself have all been on that show. We don't hold the record. There's a
Really?
family, I think, that had 6 or 7 family members, so we don't hold the record. But that was all on that show. Yeah, my mom was a producer and a casting director and an actress, performer, singer. So
Gorgeous.
she did a lot, and then she founded the Greenwich Mews Playhouse in Manhattan, and she hired my dad to play Creon. This is like 1947, 48.
Mother's Dorothy Bryce, by the way. Yep.
Correct. Dorothy Bryce. So that's how they met, and they fell in love doing that show. And then, yeah, they had their incredibly difficult, strange, weird, miraculous career
Yep.
that they both had, which anybody, as you know, Gina, if you
Yep.
can survive in this business, it's been a miraculous journey.
It has. And I want to get into that, but first I want to jump into let's start with your health. Let you have got first of all, you could tell Ashley, Scott is a natural storyteller. He is so engaging, so I just love listening to him, but
He had such a rigorous health journey, which began last year. Scott, lead us into what happened to you last year. How did you know you were sick? How did it lead you into your Godwink that looked, as you described, as a Caribbean angel?
Yeah. Well, there have been several along this journey. It's
Right.
been the presence of God. Sorry.
Hey, we're criers. You know what it is?
We have a
It's the
lot of
spirit.
crying on this podcast.
It's the spirit of God. Go ahead, Karen.
So the spirit was very intense and guarded me. I am 34 years sober, and that has also helped me tremendously because all those mantras, let go, let God, turn it over, the serenity prayer, were huge, powerful tools in this onslaught. So for 25 years, my wife, Jody Stevens, who's a Broadway veteran and singer, and she teaches voice, so what does she know, has been telling me that I've had acid reflux for years, that it's dangerous. She's heard it. And indeed, I went into treatment for that about 2.5 years ago. 3 years ago, I had um, a bleeding ulcer. I was treated with antibiotics. It went away. My primary care doctor, Dr. Richard Singer, and Norwalk Radiology from our local hospital must have called me 4 times each and said, you really should get an endoscopy to let's check what's going on. And I was fine because I'm a man and we have a broken chromosome, so we don't go to doctors.
True story.
It kept getting worse. I started to lose weight. I was being treated for a thing called GERD, which is sort of an advanced level of acid reflux. It wasn't helping. I went out to go to Pittsburgh to go see Tamara Tooney's mother's 90th birthday. Huge event. It was amazing. Tamara and I are very close. We've been roommates in houses several times. We're like a sister. And she hugged me and she looked at me and said, "Are you all right?" And that was my first like real flag where I thought, okay, somebody just hugged me and asked me if I'm sick. My brother's 75th birthday was coming up. We had plans to surprise him. So I kept on putting off doctors. We flew down to Wilmington where he lives. And my other brother, Phil, and I and our wives stood on the front lawn. And as he opened the door to get the paper, we sang happy birthday as a surprise for him. I could not eat dinner that night. I could not drink water the next morning. I couldn't hold it down. So off we go to the emergency endoscopy, and it was supposed to last 20 minutes. In less than 5, I was out. And I said to Jody, "How long was I in there?" And she said, 5 minutes. And I thought, I'm in deep, deep trouble. And the anesthetist came in and I said, "Is it cancer?" And he said, "The doctor will be in a moment." So then the doctor comes in and goes, "Yep, you have a large aggressive tumor and we need you to get to oncology very quickly." And I said, "Like when?" And he said, "You'll be leaving here and going there now."
Oh,
Because
goodness.
the tumor was larger than my fist and at the juncture of my stomach and my esophagus. So it had started in my stomach and then grew up into the esophagus. It had gotten so big that eventually it cut off any ability to swallow. So that's how we saw it. So that started the journey. I was ordered to get second opinions in New York, which I did. And I was at Columbia Presbyterian, and Dr. Moy, brilliant genius. I describe him as a Star Trek character. He's like a very large, handsome head with this body that just supports the brain, and he kind of floated in. And he said, "I only have 2 questions for your doctor." And I said, "Well, how do I put you in touch?" And that's when I realized his phone was out. And he goes, "I got it." And he went, "Rich, hi, Dr. Moy." And he stepped out in the hall. And I thought, my doctor's on speed dial with this guy. That's a good sign. And he came back and said, "I do exactly what your doctor's doing." And I was okay. So we had that from MSK as well. And I thought, let me just get treatment here in Norwalk. And the first little Godwink I got was when I pulled into valet parking. It's a separate place for the cancer patients, very minimal security, very nice, beautiful, free valet parking. Jody had to be at our college with our son for family weekend. I could not attend. I had 2 friends with me. I stepped out of the car and I'm looking at the word cancer, which was just sort of doing that. And I heard this young South Norwalk kid say, "How are you today, sir?" The valet attendant. And I'm looking at the word cancer. I'm oblivious to this human being. And I said, "I'm nervous." And I felt something touch my arm. And I turned. And he had fingers on my arm with one hand. He had my ticket in the other. He's looking me in the eye. And he said, "Then you're in the right place."
Yeah. Just the
And
compassion.
I'm like, so that was the compassion from valet parking, and it continued.
Yeah.
You have to surrender to the journey. This was bigger than I could ever have conceived of. My mother was a cancer survivor. So that also helped me in terms of courage. And then it was just a matter of acceptance. I think what's odd about it all is that all during this time that I didn't know if I was going to live or die, particularly in the beginning, I felt this voice telling me I'm going to be okay.
Right.
And I just and I guess I have to preface this by saying that didn't mean I was going to live,
Right.
but I was going to be okay. And I was bathed in this sort of comfort. And I went in and the fear left. And then it was just, okay, what's next? What do I do? What's the next step? What happens? And the doctors came in and we had a conference and they were like, we have a very good chance of saving your life. You are just in time that it's not stage 4. So I started on chemotherapy and immunotherapy, which I happen to have been a match for. It doesn't work for everybody. It did for me. Immunotherapy is a miracle. Cancer cells, first of all, they're created by our own body. So our body doesn't recognize them as a pathogen. Once they start to replicate out of control, they also have a cloaking device that hides from your immune system. So what immunotherapy does is it puts a protein marker on the cancer cell. And as soon as that marker's on the cell, your own immune system sees it, attacks it, and kills it.
Now let me just hold you here, Scott. When you are so well versed in this, obviously your mother's a survivor. Are you in this moment? You're bathed in grace. Are you being analytical about it, or
Yes.
do you, or is that helping you? Or are you in this moment surrendered?
No, it's both.
Both.
As I say, praise God, praise science.
Yeah.
And science is a gift of God. Our minds, our
minds.
intellect, are be able to
Our
create,
intellect.
solutions to problems. The amount of work that's been done, the amount of care that I received was overwhelmingly amazing. I will say that nurses are angels on earth.
They are. I mean, it is remarkable. Ashley, I'm sure you've had your instances where you've seen hospitals with grandmother and all this, and just even the fact that they take on that vocation, that's God given. I couldn't do it.
No, I couldn't do it.
No.
It's a calling. And what struck me, there were a couple of moments that were amazing. After my surgery, well, to catch you up, I did chemotherapy and immunotherapy, which successfully shrank the tumor. The tumor kept shrinking. I couldn't eat. I started immunotherapy and chemotherapy on a Wednesday afternoon. That Sunday night, I was able to swallow the tiniest bit of egg salad, and it like the tip of a teaspoon, and it went down and it stayed down.
Right.
And I wept for 15 minutes, thanking
Of
God.
course. Yeah.
And I will say, one of the things that I said in the interview, what resonated with a few people, I said, and as the nurse said to me, everybody's got a million problems until they have cancer, then they only have one. And, nothing
true.
focuses your mind, right? But it was the moment I realized when I could swallow and I wept and I thought everything that I thought was important is meaningless. And
Yes.
everything that I thought was mundane is actually sacred. This
love that.
act of eating is a miracle. And I eat differently. I eat with mindfulness for the life I may take to eat, and thanking God for that, thanking God for the hands that brought this to me and to this table, thanking God that I have my family I can share it with. All those things became profound. Anyway, I stepped into the doctor's office the next Monday morning, and my doctor opened the door, walked in, and looked at me and said, "Oh, it's working." He could see it.
could
And
see it
that
that
was after
quickly.
the he just looked at me, said, "Oh, good, it's working." I did a CAT scan about 3 months later, and the tumor had shrunk dramatically. By the time they did the surgery, which had to happen anyway because it was so advanced, the tumor itself, the primary tumor, was gone. I did have cancer infection in several lymph nodes that they had to remove. I had 3/4 of my stomach taken out, half my esophagus. They then stretched that into a tube. So I now eat 5 or 6 times a day. I can't eat really big meals. I can never lie flat again. I have to sleep sitting up. Adjustments that are, frankly minor, would you care to live? You just have to sleep sitting up. Yeah. No
Yeah.
I
Love
got the
that.
sitting up part.
I-
So yeah, and then along the way, there were so many little Godwinks
Okay.
and little moments of in panic. I remember when I woke up after the surgery and didn't wake up. You don't actually sleep in intensive care. I mean, it was 10 days I was in there. So it's a step down unit, actually one step down. And I was sliding into some self-pity, which I had successfully avoided for months. And I could feel it. And I knew how dangerous it was.
Can we just stop there?
Yeah.
Why is self-pity so dangerous?
Because it takes you down the tunnel of why me, and then you're victimized.
You're a victim.
And-
And when you're a victim, it is a weakening state.
You are powerless as a victim, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're right. If you're being attacked and assaulted, you are a victim. right? And so there I was trying not to be, trying to live in the blessings of the moment, trying to live in the blessings of look where I live, look where the zip code I'm in, look at the treatment I've had, I have the insurance, I have the money in the bank that's paying my mortgage while I'm sick, thank God. So, and I kept thinking I would remind myself, what does the single mother with 2 kids getting off the school bus who has cancer, how do they do this? Because I'm coming home from chemotherapy and sleeping for 18 hours because my wife can pick up the slack. What about the person who can't? What, and I couldn't even imagine it. Anyway, I'm starting to slip into this bit. And part of the reason I got depressed the night before, Jodie had just left. She was directing Annie. So she was a mess anyway. 11 kids and Annie at the Windsor Playhouse.
Actually directs, her eyes just blew up.
Yeah.
I work with
So
children.
I'm in the room and I had a moment. There's about 20 minutes at a time where you're left alone. There's cables coming out of me. I had 10 hoses coming out of me. It was a garden hose out of my nose. It was so insane. And I heard this alarm go off outside in the hallway. And I thought, oh, that doesn't sound good. It was like, DEFCON 5 from Red October.
Sure, yeah.
And I thought, I hope that person's okay. And it was my door that burst open and 12 people are running in with the crash cart.
Man.
And they're all talking to me simultaneously and they're talking to each other and my arms are being pulled out and people are injecting things. And then a nurse literally crawled up on top of me. She straddled me. Now, remember, I'm out of surgery 24 hours, 48 hours, maybe. She straddles me, sticks this thin metal straw in my mouth, goes, blow through this 3 times, go, go, go. And I blew through it. I'm panicking. Everyone's panicking. The alarms are insane. Then she puts her arms through my arms around my neck and lifts me up to her. I am like face to face with this human. And she says, I want you to bear down. You need to bear down and push. Push like there's a baby you got to get out. Push down and go. Push 1, 2, 3. Nothing's making sense. Out of my mouth comes, oh God, please not like this. And what I meant by that was after all the struggle, after all the chemo, after all the surgery, and Jodie's just left, I'm going to die now. It seemed unfair in that moment. And this nurse, her eyes connected with me. And I will tell you, there was 2 souls, 2 open souls looking at each other. And her voice dropped. She wasn't yelling anymore. She said to me, one hand went up on my head and I felt like it was my mother. The other eyes are looking at me. She's still like a Marine Corps drill sergeant, but there was this other thing that happened, this compassion. And she said, on 3, Scott, we're going to push the baby out. 1, 2, 3, push. And I did, and all the alarms went off. Everything stopped. And half the people leave the room, and she and I are just looking at each other, and I started to cry, and she started to cry.
Oh, shit.
And there was that. So what had happened was my heart to 6 beats per minute. It was like homogenizing. And they were getting ready with the paddles to paddle me to stop it if they can.
Okay.
And what she was doing is, there's a nerve down in your gut that if they can get it just to turn the right way, and if you bear down just the right way, there's a 20% chance that they can stop the heartbeat and they don't have to use the paddles. And it worked.
And so the pushing was to get in touch with the nerve?
Yes, to press down on the nerve to stop it. And so my heart stopped.
It did actually stop.
Well, it didn't stop. It went back to normal beating. From 186, it went back down to 72, like that.
Like that.
And everything calmed down. There had been talk about moving me to another room. That went away. The crash cart was always in view of me for the next 10 days. Like there it was. And later that afternoon, everybody left. And that's when the spiral started to happen to me. And I thought, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. And this whole struggle has, what is this for? Why am I having this guy?
The questions.
And my phone hit my thigh and it was lit. And I flipped it over and it was a Facebook meme is what it looked like. And there were words and I looked at it and it said, your suffering is not punishment. It is a wake-up call and you are ascending. And then it went off and I never saw it again.
I mean,
and I was like,
I'm not going to lie. I don't even think we talked about that in the pre-interview.
Oh, I'm like, oh my God.
You got me.
Oh my God.
That's a Godwink.
That chill that happened, that thing on the back of your neck when the Godwink comes and you recognize it. And there it was. And it went away. And it was like,
you're ascending. You're not, you're suffering. You're not being punished.
It's not punishment.
You're ascending.
This is something else. And then to realize oftentimes, suffering and joy, what are they? They're the flip of the same thing. As my mother once said, if the eyes had no tears, the soul would have no rainbows. And you're like, sometimes there are these things, this journey that we're on, which sometimes doesn't make sense.
Right.
Again, I go back to having gotten so close to the veil a couple of times, I would tell you that the power behind it is so massive, so beyond our comprehension. And I realized that God is not a white man with a beard. It is a force that is so powerful, so amazing, and that was here before time existed. These rules that we live in, it's not subject to. We keep on, God doesn't need gravity. God, it's like a whole different thing. And the power is so massive and so beyond what I in my little mind can even conceive of or name.
Right. Right. It's humbling. It's humbling.
Deeply humbling.
So you're in this humbled state, and then it goes a little bit further. I'll let you take it.
Well,
And you
previously about the Caribbean nurse, which is
Yeah.
such a wild story. That was actually in January, about a year ago. I was in the midst of chemotherapy. I had a very tough weekend. I was in a lot of pain in my back, and I wasn't sleeping, and I got very wonky. And I was brought in for my chemo on a Tuesday morning, and they have to give you a blood test first to make sure my kidneys are functioning, et cetera. They do the blood test, and then the doctor looks at me, and I'm just yelling. All I want to do is go to sleep. The doctor says, I want you to take him home. I'm not going to treat him today, and let's talk about this later. Jody got me home. We had to stop a couple of times for me to purge on the way home. That was horrible. I got home and I became verbally abusive to her, which I never do. So this was some other personality thing. And I was screaming at her and screaming curse words and saying, leave me alone. I got to go to sleep. And I went to bed. She was so upset she had to leave the house. And she's driving away and the phone rings and it's the doctor. And the doctor says, do not call the ambulance. Get him in the car. Bring him to ER right now. We're waiting.
Whoa.
So she went back to the house and said, Scott, your doctor calls. He wants you at the ER. And for some reason, I became childlike complacent. Fine, let's go. So I got in the car and off we go to ER. And they indeed were waiting and they were all there. I was rushed into surgery. And it turns out that I only have one functioning kidney. The other kidney atrophied. They don't know when. They don't know why.
Now, was that a symptom, the change of personality, the
Yeah.
common?
Well, what was happening was, and nobody knew it, my system was backing up. They took 11 liters of fluid out of me in the OR.
Uh-huh.
So my kidney had shut down. The doctor told me a couple days later, I said, was I in danger of like losing my kidney? And he said, you were 6 hours away from dead.
Yeah.
My goodness.
And had you gone to sleep, you would not have woken up.
Because essentially there's toxins, right, in your body.
Yeah, it's all backing up.
Unfiltered.
Right. It's disgusting. And it's just making you go to sleep. And frankly, it's probably one of the most pleasant ways to pass, if you will, because you just get delirious and go to sleep.
Oh, my goodness.
So I woke up, it was about 7 o'clock at night, and Jody, my wife, was gone, and the doctors were gone. I don't remember any of them being there. I remember nothing. And I'm on a drug called Dilaudid, a very, very heavy painkiller. I've now got this hose coming out of my kidney, which is draining. And I wake up and I'm in another like step down unit, one step down from intensive care. And there's a surgeon there with an intern going over my like CAT scans. There's nurses, I've got wires and stuff all over you, imagine, and there's on monitors. And there were two nurses talking. And then there was this very, very tall, stunningly beautiful, like black skinned nurse in a dark blue uniform. And she had light hair and it was in these like braids, long, long braids that went down to like her knees. And occasionally in these braids were these little colored seashells. She was stunning. And she comes over to me and takes my hands, and she's Caribbean because this lilt happens. And she picked up my hands and she said, don't worry, you're going home. It's not your time. But know this, time is an illusion. There is no time. You are already with him. But home now, you have an illusion to learn. And she steps away. And the nurse comes over and does some more stuff. Then she comes back, takes my hands, and she says, Jesus, guide my health. Jesus, guide my wealth. Jesus, guide my life. And I looked at her and I said, it's a complicated thing, but I said, I'm a Unitarian, which is we're slightly different that way with how we deal with Jesus. And she just smiled and she said, Jesus is your way to talk with God. That's all. Then she stepped away and the nurse turned and said, I'm sorry, Scott. Did you say something?
Wow.
And I turn and I look up at the Caribbean nurse and I said, can they see you? And she says,
And you're seeing this.
I'm seeing this. And she steps back into the corner. And now I'm like, right. And now remember, please, God, I'm higher than a kite. So
Sure.
I'm barely
Yeah.
aware.
Yep.
Everything's a jump cut. And then I noticed the doctors are gone, and now we're down to just one nurse. The doctors have left, the other nurse has left. There's just my nurse and this Caribbean nurse. She comes back, she takes my hands again. She gives me some blessing I don't remember. Tears are streaming down like a fire hose. And Gina, I wasn't upset, but it was
Right.
a fire. There was just like a faucet.
Right. A
And she's
release, maybe like a release.
Maybe. I don't know. It wasn't
I don't know.
emotional. It was almost like just physical, like water pouring. And then she takes my hands again and she goes, "Don't cry. I see you in heaven." And she kisses and she walks out the door. And I passed out.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd
The
pass out
next,
too.
yeah. Next morning, I woke up and I started to ask about, well, we had another incident that night. My bag fell off the table. My hose pulled out of my kidney. I had to go into emergency surgery at 1 o'clock in the morning to get it redone. I had a nurse, Matthew, who was with me the whole time. The doctors thought I was delusional because it had been reported I was
Right.
seeing things.
You have to, and
They
that's the
didn't.
thing. If you have a near-death experience, you have
Right.
to actually see a psychiatrist.
Well, that came
Psychologist?
later. But anyway, so they didn't believe me that I was in trouble, that the hose fell out. And then it did. They put it back in. I got back in. I was fine. The next morning I came to and I started asking because she was so helpful to me. Where's the Caribbean nurse? What do you mean? You know, the tall woman with the blonde hair and the seashells, the black skin. What are you talking about? They have no idea what I'm talking
She
about.
doesn't work here.
Yeah.
There is nobody like that. So I'm thinking, okay, so I told my wife about it and she laughs and said, well, let's call her Nurse Dilaudid because that was the drug I was on.
Oh.
So because I had a near-death experience, now I have a therapist that's assigned to me once you go into cancer treatment that just is part of the package that they take care of you with here. I mean,
Nice. Oh, nice.
nutritionist, I mean, a therapist every time I'm getting an infusion. You want to talk today about whatever, and you don't have to. So they said to me, because of it's near death and because there's a real danger of depression, all sorts of things, we need you to see a psychiatrist. So I went to go see the psychiatrist. And we met actually on Zoom, and his name was Dr. Atta, and it's a much longer name. It turns out he was Iranian. And I said, "What's your last name?" He says, "I'm Persian." And I went, "I dated an Iranian girl once." And he looked up at me like I had busted him, you know, and and it was a different sort of recognition of each other. And I said, "I assume you're a Muslim." He said, "I am," because he asked me about my faith. And I said, "I don't mean to offend you. I love God. I have real problems with a lot of religion." And he says, "I am completely the same." And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I trusted him. I told him the story of the nurse. He looked at me at the end of the story and said, "Do you think that really happened?" And I said, "Does it matter? It brought me comfort." And he said, "Excellent answer. I'm not worried about you at all." And I never had to see him.
That's so
Yeah,
interesting.
that was in January. So several months ago, my buddy Brian Bloom played Dusty Donovan on As the World Turned.
Dusty Donovan.
Yeah, there you go. Electric blue eyes. Right?
And fun fact, Debbie Gibson's song "Lost in Your Eyes" was
It's about
it's about him, Brian Bloom.
his eyes. Yeah,
Crazy, beautiful blue eyes.
So Brian and I also did a series called 2000 Malibu Road years later, directed by Joel Schumacher. It was a huge hit with Drew Barrymore and Lisa Hartman Black and Jennifer Beals. And everybody's last name was B. So anyway, I hadn't contacted Brian in probably over a year. And he texted me going, "What's up, dude? Just checking in." I said, "Long health journey, but tough year." And in seconds, he called me. He says, "What's going on?" So I shared with him my cancer journey and the whole thing I was in. And I started to share with him about almost dying in January. And I said, anyway, and I got to the point of, so there's the doctors and two nurses, and there was this very, very tall, beautiful, dark-skinned Caribbean nurse. And Brian says, at that moment, "I know where this is going. She wasn't there." And I looked at him and I said, "Wow, how do you know that and why would you say that?" And he said, "Well, I've just been working with a man named Sebastian Junger. Sebastian Junger wrote the Perfect Storm novel, later to be turned into the movie with George
The famous
Clooney,
movie.
among other very successful novels. He's also a military historian. So Brian was working with him on a project for Warner Brothers. He's also been a committed lifelong atheist until recently, when he had an incident, and he's written a book about it called In My Time of Dying, Coming Face to Face with the Fact of an Afterlife, which I've just bought. I'm going to read. And he lives in upstate New York, and he had a stomach aneurysm. and nobody knew it. And he didn't have any pain, but he was bleeding to death. He just kept getting weaker. He didn't know. He suddenly had an overwhelming, agonizing pain in his stomach, which the doctors cannot explain, and said you shouldn't have known. You shouldn't have felt anything. But it got him to the ER. They get him to the ER. They did a quick CAT scan, and he was, boom, in emergency, bleeding out internally. So they saved his life. He was in a coma for 7 days. Imagine that. He came out of a coma on the 7th day, and says, "Where's the Caribbean nurse, the one that was praying with me?"
Well, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no Caribbean nurse.
Does he go into, I hope he goes into detail with it in the book.
He and I are going to get connected. Brian's reached out to him
Have to.
through email because I want to know what she looked like.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and if he tells me
Gotta
there
hear it
were
all.
seashells in her hair,
That's it.
it.
Yeah, make a movie.
That's it. But I thought, and I reached out to a friend of mine, Chris, and I said, 2 white dudes have got this tall, gorgeous black Caribbean nurse as
Bizarre.
guardian angels. And he
Yeah.
said to me, consider that a compliment.
Right. Right. And that was your guardian angel, you believe.
I think it's one of them.
Yeah.
I think we have more than we know. I think that there are, you know, we don't even hear all the sound in this world. Our ears can only hear a spectrum. We don't see everything in this world. Our eyes can only, and that's this world. And we're oblivious to a lot of it. And we think we know what reality is. You know, we talk about terra firma, and I think terra firma, you mean this down-to-earth thing in this globe that's got this molten thing on the inside that's spinning opposite, that's all twirling around this giant gas bag that's on fire in the middle of a vacuum, and the whole thing is hurtling through space at billions of miles per hour? That terra firma? And you realize there is none, you know? So, yeah, I've had angels visit me.
Wow, Gina, Scott is absolutely incredible, and we are not done chatting with him yet.
Oh, no, we are not done because Scott can really give incredible detail. Now, he goes into some more Godwinks and some lessons that he learned along the way. Stay tuned for some really good stories.
We'll be back with part 2 very soon. Please make sure that you follow us on social media. We are active on Facebook and Instagram. And if you go to our Instagram and click on the link in bio, there's a form for you to share your Godwinks with us, and we would absolutely love to hear them.